an extra like 10 seconds. So bear with me just a sec. Okay. Here we go. All right. Okay, let's do it. And we'll jump in. Eventually I'll put like a proper intro and music and sponsor stuff and all that. All right. All right. Today, my guest on the show is Melanie Everett. Melanie is well, actually, let me start that one over. My apologies. I screwed something up
Wait,
here.
they're gonna see me, right?
They are going to see you.
Okay, so I should like have a pleasant face.
I think you should just be you. I don't
Okay,
think
be
you should.
sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Take
No
two.
problem.
All right. Today, my guest is top 1% agent, brokerage owner, team leader, Melanie Everett. Let me tell you more about Melanie. By the way, this is Melanie's second appearance on our show. She was on our show probably 4 or 5 years ago. A great episode, and I'm really excited to have her back. Very rarely do we ever have a guest back, but Melanie has all sorts of fun things to talk about with us today. But let me tell you more about her in case you're not as familiar. Now, Melanie Everett is an award-winning broker and also the founder of her boutique real estate brokerage called Melanie Everett and Company, serving Chicago and the western suburbs of Chicago. She is a writer, a negotiator, a thinker, a marketer, teacher, reader, and leader in her industry. Since 2014, Melanie and her team have sold more than $300 million in residential sales and closed over 700 transactions. Melanie Everett & Co. consistently ranks in the top 1% of all brokers in Chicago. And in 2023, Melanie's powerful team earned the Chicago Association of Realtors Platinum Award for a number of transactions. And I want to give a few other accolades that Melanie would probably be too humble to share, but I want to share these just to tell you how amazing her and her team are. They, this year, top 15 small team in Illinois by volume, top 30 team in Chicago by transactions, top 50 team in Chicago by volume, Chicago Association's top producers, top agent network members, and back in 2017, she was a 30 under 30 NAR winner. So this is somebody who really, we're so excited. She does not really have time to do this, and we are basically twisting her arm to come back, and we're so grateful. I want everybody to check out our website, MelanieEverettCo.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes, and follow her on Instagram, Melanie Everett Co. Also linked to that in the show notes. Melanie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, DJ, and thanks for that amazingly kind intro. I appreciate it. After hearing all of those accolades, I'm honestly tired. I'm like, when did I have time for that?
Well, and we should also mention you're a mom and wife and all sorts of other things too, in addition to running a successful practice. So you have plenty
That
on
is
your
true.
plate. And I know time is short, so we want to make the most of the time that we get to have with you. I wanted just to first start with something we talked about on several, probably 400 episodes ago when I had you on before, which was the idea that so few realtors talk about being introverted, and you're a self-described introvert. I am also an introvert, although I think a lot of people may not know that so much about me, but the truth is I am. It's hard for me to be in social situations with others. This is actually pretty easy, but there's a lot of distance here, but it's a challenge for me to do some of the things that I think a lot of our listeners may experience, being introverts as well. So I just wanted to talk just a little bit about that before we get into branding, about what's it like being an introverted realtor, and what might you say to any of our listeners who feel the same way?
Oh, such a great topic, DJ. Thank you for bringing that up. I definitely would consider myself to be like an extroverted introvert where I do love going to events. I do love, being with friends, like being with others does energize me, but in small doses, and I feel like I need a lot of time to like recover afterwards. So for instance, like if we have a big team meeting or something like that takes a lot out of me, and I like to have time built into my day to like have some solo work time or to like come home and relax before, if I have anything else that evening, I go to that. so on and so forth. So definitely feel like being a little bit more introverted, you need to build more margin into your day and your routine and not stack appointments. Part of the issue with the real estate world is that it's all about that hustle culture. It's all
Yeah.
about being as busy as possible. You have to have as many appointments in a day as you can possibly fit. And for me, I just like am not operating at my best if I'm that slammed and that, running all over the place back to back on appointments. So really trying to, build space into my daily routine, not have too crazy of days with too many events or meetings or obligations in one day, but really trying to schedule accordingly for what's going to work for my, you know, mental health.
Yeah, and the good news for our listeners who feel similarly, like you're not alone. This is not an uncommon. I mean, being an extroverted introvert or some sort of combination of the two is more common than not. So we can all relate in certain ways to that. I know for me, I used to stack appointments for my own part of what I do here at the business, and boy, I would, it was not a good idea. I did that for years and years and years. And I would come home exhausted and I couldn't figure out, what am I doing wrong? And it was, yeah, I needed some of that recharge time. So I can certainly appreciate that. So I appreciate you saying that,
Mhm.
because again, in hustle culture, it does seem that you're maybe falling behind if you don't have things stacked right on
Mhm.
top of each other. And you're proof
Yeah.
that that doesn't have to be the case. So I love that.
Hopefully, I will also add that I think there's this assumption that real estate agents are the loudest people in the room. Like a real estate agent is magnetic. They're the most social. Like they get to the party and they're lighting up the party, like everyone wants to talk to them and they're popular and all of that. And I definitely feel like I'm at the other end of that spectrum. In a large group setting, I'm like quieter. In a big meeting or like a mastermind or something like that, I'm definitely not the loudest person in the group unless I know them really well and I'm super comfortable. Maybe I'm, a lot chattier, but I feel like when I'm new to a situation or going into a large group or an event or a party, like I'm not the loudest in the room by any means. I think I listen a lot, I ask a lot of questions, and then when I feel like the time is right or I have something of value to add to that conversation, I'll say it, but I'm not going in and, automatically being the most outgoing person, I guess, if that makes sense. So definitely don't feel like every agent has to be that way, but it's almost like that's the perception of the industry is that the real estate agents are the loudest, the chattiest, and like the most outgoing.
Yeah, that's very true. I totally agree. And there's probably a lot of people breathing a sigh of relief that you can be successful without having to be the most sort of actively in your face agent, which those are great too. And I really admire those agents that have that ability to really just put it all out there. And, so in such an intense way. That's not me personally, and sounds like that isn't you as well. And it's nice that there's room for all of us. So appreciate that. Um, I want to talk about branding, because I think that is something that you have done extremely well, and in a way that is different. I think your aesthetic, I think, is different from what a lot of agents or people who look at agents might think an agent's aesthetic is. I like how you, I like how you built your brand in this very, I would call it sort of this elegant and subtle way. And maybe I hope that that sort of sounds like
I
what you
love
like.
those
But
words. Those are great words. Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about it. How did you build your brand?
Ooh, okay. Well, I started this brokerage 5.5 years ago. So I've had quite a bit of time to really like discover what is my brand, who am I as a business owner, and what do I want our like brand identity to really be like and feel like. And I really feel like at the end of the day, our brand and voice is me. It is an extension of me. It is very authentic to who I am as a person and like my actual voice. But at this point, it's kind of taken on its own personality where like it's not an I anymore. Like my brand isn't I, it isn't Melanie, it's we, it's the team. It's like we are an us. And that messaging, I think, comes through loud and clear in all of our resources and what we offer to our buyers and sellers. So definitely building that has been a labor of love with a lot of revisions. We had one color, for instance, when we started the brokerage, that was like our visual identity. And now, 5.5 years later, we have a totally different color scheme, different visual identity with different logos and things to differentiate us. But I've loved that journey. I've found so much joy and passion in helping to build that brand. And I also have people that I get to work with now that share that vision with me and that are way more creative and digitally skilled than I will ever be. So really having those key players has been such a huge value add for me and my brokerage of really taking us to the next level and like elevating all of our marketing to really reflect that brand identity.
Yeah, let's talk about your brand identity. How would you sum that up?
I would say elegant is definitely a word that I like. I'm glad that you brought that up. I like that word elegant. I would say we're very relatable. We're very down to earth, and that I would think is reflected in our brand. But we're also very tailored, obsessed with details, and have a very specific look online where there's not a comma out of place. There's nothing blurry that's being uploaded. Everything is very crisp, clear to the point, but it has like a friendly feel, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I think that's very interesting because you came from a different world. So you were, if I remember correctly, you studied journalism. Is that correct in college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Right
you
on.
wanted to be a writer, and what I liked, and I want to talk about this, and I don't know that you still are doing this currently because you guys have become such a big brand and a big brokerage. It would be difficult, I think, to do this. But one thing I really loved is that you would write stories about your clients, and you would publish blog posts saying, here's the story of so and so, and this is the house they purchased or the home they sold, and it would go in depth. It wasn't just here's who they are, and it was a story. It was really interesting, and then you would share that on your website. And can you talk about, so, and I just love that idea, and I've never heard of another agent that does that, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds for the podcast here. So could you just walk us through sort of what that did for your brand, and how that helped you guys grow?
Oh, yes, of course. I love that you remember all of that and my background and everything. That's so funny. But yeah, I started, my very first closing, I snapped a picture of my buyer at the final walkthrough, and I then turned that picture into a social media post and also a blog post, where in that post I wrote the story of how I met my client, how we were introduced, what our searching journey was like, how competitive it was to get a property, and then the end result. So, what did my client buy? And I just loved writing the more personal side of the transaction. I think a lot of agents at the time, and still now, do a mix of things, but at the time, a lot of agents that I saw and followed were posting, just sold, represented buyer, here was the purchase price. And that was so great and adds so much credibility to those agents' brands. But then I thought, who am I as a person? What is the story that I want to tell? Well, I really want to make it about the clients. I want to tell the client's story and just bring a level of relatability to what is a very scary thing, buying your first property. And so the idea just kind of snowballed from there of like, okay, I'm going to do this consistently. At every final walkthrough, there will be a picture taken and there will be a story told. Not every buyer at this point gets the write up. That's something where we switch off. Agents on my team will feature a buyer almost every month and then do a little write up on that buyer. But now I would say we're really, telling those stories as simply as possible in the social media captions and posting a story and saying on Instagram stories and saying just a little bit about what the client bought and then showing, of course, their final walkthrough picture. So it's like still the same. We're still doing so much of those things that I did early on, but it's just grown up a little bit and become something where, we did 99 transactions this year. It's not practical to write 99 posts and 99 stories. So doing it in like a more digestible way.
Well, and people aren't reading blogs as much anymore. So
Right.
unfortunately, we've moved away from that, obviously.
Right.
Instagram and TikTok have brought
Mhm.
us more into sort of the visual medium, and so for us, for all the writers out there, it's a little tougher to do that, but you can still adapt and tell
Mhm.
these stories in just different ways. So I appreciate you talking about how you evolve that. And I also want to just go back to something too that was one of just the most consistent actions I've seen an agent take to build their brand, which was you became very well known for being one of the most consistent, probably the most consistent agent. By the way, we have 46,000 realtors in the Chicagoland area. There's 1 point, whatever many million nationwide. I've really yet to meet anybody who did this quite as effectively as you. As you started doing home buyer seminars, so you want to buy a condo, which or so you want to buy X. You did these. I mean, I would see them all the time advertised on Facebook, and boy, I wonder how many of those do you think you've done in your history?
We've been doing them for 9 years and almost consistently doing at least one a month. So do the math on that.
Yeah,
9 times 12, a lot. But the idea has evolved so much too. In the beginning, it was something a lot smaller where I was inviting my friends and my family, and it was just, I remember our first guests were like, my cousin was there, a couple friends of friends were there, and it was such a small affair where we were just trying to get our feet wet and get the training wheels off and throw an event and see what would happen. And then from there, it really grew into, we got invited to tons of companies in the city to teach these classes. We went to,
brilliant.
the list goes on and on, like Deloitte, PwC, Uber, Grubhub, all of the companies that were at certain times during the last decade or so, big names in Chicago, like we had the opportunity to actually go there and teach our class. So it really went from being like a very grassroots thing of friends and family, just people who knew us, to being invited into different companies and organizations to teach and share, what it takes to purchase your first home. And then it also kind of along those lines became something where we were advertising online for people to come to these events. So that's when you saw a lot of those Facebook ads. I think at a certain point we tried advertising on Instagram too. And that was maybe the golden age of the So You Want to Buy a Condo platform, because at any given in-person event, we would have between 50 and 100 people there, like huge events. 100 maybe is too rich of a number. I think maybe our max audience was like 85, 90,
But still
including
amazing.
5 of my family members, so subtract 5. But, like, still, like, that was such a huge crowd, and so much of that came from people just seeing the ad on Facebook. Now, in the years since then, Facebook has changed a ton. It's very hard to advertise on Facebook for these events just because there's a lot more restrictions in place for anything related to housing, and you
Yep.
can't necessarily get the same effect for the same dollar amount either. Like it's become a lot more expensive to advertise on Facebook. And Facebook, I mean, who's looking at Facebook as much? Not as many people. They're looking at TikTok and Instagram. So we really, in the last 2 years, honed our strategy on like organic outreach, finding ways to reach people that don't involve paying for digital ads. It got to the point where it was too expensive and it wasn't sustainable. And so we've had a lot of success just doing, outreach through our newsletter, through different social groups that we know of, through partnering with organizations and other people that want to, extend their audience to hear this message along with us. So there's been so much opportunity and doors have opened over the years. And I'm so thankful that we had the foresight to put this seminar into practice and start doing it when we did. But it's also, yeah, just changed a lot. And it's one of my main, lead generation funnels still, but it's not the only funnel. It used to be my only funnel. All my business came from it. Now I would say we're much more like vast and varied in that way.
Yeah, it was a great way to get your name out there. I mean, everybody that I knew was talking about these presentations you were doing. And I love that you went in-house at some of these organizations, because for anyone listening that goes, well, I don't know people at those organizations. Well, you have clients or you have friends who work at places. I would ask everybody in your sphere, and I'm of course talking to our audience, not Melanie, but ask them, say, hey, can you connect me with your HR person? I would love to come and host a presentation, bring in lunch, or maybe not even just do that. And HR people love to do this because it justifies their existence. They feel like they're bringing value to their company, to the employees, and, especially like tech firms. Like, these are young people who are probably making decent incomes and are renting now, but should be buying in the future, or maybe should be buying now. And you might just be that person. So when you were doing those in-person events, how often, I mean, obviously you're not closing every person that walks through the door, and that's not really the intention either. The intention is to give them really great information and hope that they obviously choose you. Because I know you are not somebody who it does these to try to say, well, I'm going to get this person to this person. It's an attract strategy versus a power strategy of just sort of trying to get as many leads as
Mm.
possible. But when you did these in-person events, how effective was that? Were you getting people just from coming to an event saying, I want to work with you?
Well, sometimes yes. I would literally leave the event with somebody's email address written down on, a notebook that was like, follow up with this person tomorrow, send them the buyer guide, book your consultation. So those were, few and far between. For the most part, it was such a slow burn. It's
Sure.
like people would come to the event after seeing the ad maybe more than once. So it would take a couple of hits to get them to convert and actually come to the event. And then after the event, the beauty was really in the follow up. So at this time, we have developed a 10-week follow up campaign after the classes that hits them once a week with a very short and sweet email packed of information. So they're not emails to say, thanks so much for coming, want to work with you, call me, let's get together and start looking for a home together. It was not like that. It was very subtle, to use your word, DJ, and just adding value. So the first email in the 10-week campaign was like, we're going to recap what's involved with getting ready to start a home search. And then the next week was all about pre-approvals and things to look out for. So it was almost like a more digestible version of So You Want to Buy a Condo went into these emails where, if somebody didn't catch everything in the seminar, or they had more questions about a certain area, there was like a place that they could go to find out more. And it was jam-packed into these short emails. So that's something that we still do. It still is very effective. After that 10 weeks are up, they automatically get added to our just general newsletter list. And then, after that, we'll reach out to seminar leads, yeah, very, very occasionally. Maybe twice a year, we might send out, a blast using yet another mail merge, which is one of our favorite like email mass sending tools. And we'll just send a very soft touch about something related to home buying. So never going for the hard sales approach, though I've definitely tried that before, and I've, applied different tactics to my business and my follow-ups. But I think for us, just adding value is enough. And right now, too, with all the changes in real estate and, all of the just the practice changes of how we do business, like people are looking for experts. They're looking not to be sold to, not to be pressured into doing anything, but they're looking for real information, real answers, real value. And that's something that I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we provide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Brian Buffini has basically, it's all about his practice is all about value, and whatever discipline of coaching that our listeners may be experiencing, value seems to be the most consistent answer I hear from the people I interview.
Mm.
I very rarely talk to somebody who's a salesperson or having sort of a salesy type of personality. That can work, absolutely can work. But for the rest of us that sort of recoil at that idea and we don't like that idea, it's not us. The attract strategy through value seems to be crazy effective, and for me, a lot more comfortable personally. So I can appreciate that. I do have an idea for you for another a presentation as I was thinking about what kind of presentation would I want. Well, my presentation would be, so you're locked into a 3% mortgage. What do you do? Because honestly,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
really a good one, because I'm not looking to move. I'm happy where I'm at. But if I wanted to, that would be a hard thing for me to wrap my mind around, right? So I love the idea of one of our listeners, running with something like that, because it's like 80% of the 85% of the homes in this country are in that position. And I know there's a lot of people that are just like, I don't know what to do. So that's always something as a little idea, maybe. I don't know.
I
But
love it. I love
I
it. Somebody should do it. Take it and run with it. It's such a good
I,
idea.
yeah, I just want people, it's funny. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I just want people to tell me what to do in life. I really do. I appreciate having a counsel. So this is why it's so great to, consider yourself as a value added realtor, because you're constantly telling people not what to do, but giving them suggestions about how they might think about something or actions they can take. And again, that's all I ever want. I just want somebody to say, "Oh, you're supposed to go do this right now." Okay, great. I don't have to think about it. I can just go do it. Tell me what to do, and I could do that. I think if there's a lot of our listeners out there thinking about how can they attract business, the value model seems to be the way to go. And certainly you can do this on
Mhm.
social media. You could do a video every day with a tip. You can go to every home you see and find something cool that you want to show off. And there's so many opportunities to just authentically provide something that's of use. Um, I want to talk about you building your company, because it seems like the way that you've built your brand is very intentional. You have, specific sort of even aesthetics that you want to maintain, as well as, how you want people to perceive your brand. You have seemed to be very intentional in the way that you grow your brokerage and hire agents to join your team. Can you talk a little bit about what you look for in an agent, and how you would know that they're a good fit?
Great question. I've been asked this many times in the past, and so I feel like I have my two, traits that I look for at the tip of my tongue. First is kindness. Somebody who is genuinely nice, somebody who, wants to collaborate, wants to have accountability, wants to build relationships with clients and like build actual friendships, not just transactions. And I definitely think kindness is like maybe an overlooked trait sometimes in real estate. Like we're looking for a conversion, we're looking for closers, we're looking for hustlers. And I'm looking for all that too. But before all of that, I want it to be somebody that is just nice and that I enjoy being with, talking to. So that's one. And then the second is loyalty. I definitely think having agents that, want to be where they're at and that aren't necessarily looking for the next opportunity, and that I can trust with, just our resources and our leads. Like there are a lot of leads being shared at our brokerage. And so, having loyal agents that, really love what they do and love serving those clients is so important to me, as well as kindness.
Yeah, and we should also remember for agents. I mean, everyone listening probably knows this. If you are a practicing agent with a decent amount of production, you are getting called all the time by other brokerages looking to poach you, to pull you away, to learn the secrets that maybe you've learned at your brokerage and bring those over. Other teams are poaching you as well, sometimes even within the same organization. So this is one of those things. Loyalty doesn't get talked about enough. And we're not talking about blind loyalty, of course. We're talking about earned loyalty, where
Mhm. Yeah.
you as the team leader have to be able to create and foster an environment to which people want to stay. Tell
Mhm.
us, how do you do that? How, because your agents are getting called all the time by everyone under the sun, come work for us. And what do you think is unique about you that causes them to want to stay and not pursue other opportunities?
Well, I think that we offer a lot as a boutique brokerage. We're not like the big brokerages. We don't have the just opportunities behind us the same way our competition might have. We don't have as big of engines as a lot of these other competitors. So we really have to get crafty with like what we can offer agents and what our value is for both clients and agents. And I think first and foremost, what we offer agents is education and resources. We have resources for everything. We have templates for everything. There's not an email that you could possibly need to send as like a part of a typical transaction that we don't already have a template made out for. So that's something that we have put a lot of time and effort into over the years, is building out these processes and systems and making sure that we're really just strong in those, because I've been the agent that, is just sending things, here and there and trying to stay organized. And when life gets busy, when work gets busy, like we all know that it's very easy to drop balls. So definitely resources is something that has become really important and like a very core part of our offering.
And
And
by the
then the
way,
next
I want to
thing,
jump in. I want to jump
oh
in for
yeah,
just a second. Please don't let me screw up your next thing. But I want to say we think that the big brokerages also have, and they do, they have lots of resources, but they have different kinds of resources. I've never known a brokerage that said, I have 100 email templates for any part of a transaction that you could use. I mean, I suspect that doesn't exist anywhere but at a boutique brokerage like yours, where you have to build these things. Otherwise, you're not going to be efficient and effective. But what an amazing thing. A client asks a question and you guys already have not that you wouldn't go through and customize the answer, obviously you would, but you at least have information that they can use right away. We think the big brokerages have this. They don't typically have that kind of resource. And so I appreciate you saying that. But I just wanted to honor that, because that is incredibly useful. And I know that I would want to stay at a brokerage that had that kind of stuff, because I just want to be more efficient in my job. And I don't want to be writing an email for every question every single time, especially over and over and over again. So just wanted to honor you
right,
for that. But
right.
I'm sorry, go on to your next one.
Thanks. No, I think that's a great call out. And yeah, it's funny. I don't know really what a lot of the big brokerages have behind them at this point in time. It's been 5.5 years since I've been at a big brokerage. I do know that teams within brokerages have, different resources and such that they offer, different templates, different ways of doing things. So I definitely think like, we didn't invent templates, we didn't invent systems and processes, but to your point, we did have to get really crafty right away when my team started growing. There were more of us and we were busy and we were slammed and we were like, we are just staying afloat. We need something to really anchor us. And so that is definitely why I bring up that as the first thing. It's just like, if you're a newer agent and you're, struggling with like next steps in a transaction or just understanding the roadmap to the deals on the list side or the buy side, I really think we offer a very all-encompassing approach to deals and helping agents stay organized and stay on task with different technology and whatnot. So that's huge. Marketing, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Our marketing, I really believe, stands out. It's very different. It's very just not what you're seeing every day. And we feel like being small helps us stand out. It helps us attract more business and get, the kind of clients that want to work with an alternative to perhaps a bigger box brokerage. So definitely unique marketing concepts is huge. And then the last thing is leads. I think at the end of the day, we have a lot of leads coming in. We have a lot of different streams for leads, whether it's, so you want to buy a condo leads, whether it's referral, whether it's sphere. I have a big personal sphere that I do feel like feeds us a lot of leads. And so, my team grew only out of necessity every single year of being like, we have too much business and not enough agents. What do we do? And then the next step is, of course, we need another agent. So that's always been my desire. I've never sought out to have a huge team and have, the leads be super thin, super spread out. I've always really wanted to be able to have leads coming in and then assign them or give them to agents that I know are going to do the best job, that I trust completely, that are loyal, that are kind, that are going to like take that lead and close it. And so that, I would say, is something that is really important to our business model and something that I spend a lot of time doing. Like, lead generating is the job of any agent, right? We're all lead generators. But I feel like as a business owner and a team lead, I'm spending way more time lead generating than I am actually taking clients. I really take only a couple of clients if I have the bandwidth for it. And then everything else, I have my team take and do consult to closing.
Let's talk about lead gen a bit. And we know that you do monthly webinars or in-person events, but you're doing more than that, of course, because you said, people who show up for those sometimes, they may have to show up a few times or they may not be ready to buy for a year or more. And of course, those people, the funnel obviously gets a lot longer. But, let's talk about lead gen. This is a time where lead gen is more important than ever. We're seeing a mass exodus of agents leaving, which is probably wonderful news to everyone who is actively in the business because you actually can pick up market share. But it is certainly indicative that it's more challenging for a lot of agents right now to generate leads. So, anything that you're willing to share that's working for you and the team right now?
Mm. For sure. I mean, definitely consistency with classes. For us, it's not just so you want to buy a condo anymore, it's a whole suite of classes. It's so you want to sell a condo, it's so you want to navigate Chicago schools, it's so you want to move to the suburbs. We've done so you want to classes for agents, specifically talking about, topics that agents can benefit from. So really, that's been something that we've grown and built out that continues to generate ongoing leads. Outside of that, I would say we are very strong in our referrals. We do an amazing job in our transactions. I really, in the bottom, deepest part of my soul, like we care so deeply about these deals and no, they're not all going perfectly smooth. There are factors that are beyond our control, and we're not perfect either. There's certainly been situations where I've made a mistake and I've had to own up to it with a client or something. And it happens and it's life and it's hard to swallow, but it happens. So I definitely think, doing such a good job, putting so much heart into the transaction, letting the client benefit from our resources and our organization and our expertise. The goal is, of course, they get to the end of that transaction and they're like, wow, working with this firm, like they were small but mighty. They had everything covered. I went to a class. I got connected with an agent. I started my search. I then started working with their transaction coordination team, and everything was just, a very well oiled machine. Like that's what we feel a lot of clients leave our transactions saying and expressing in Google reviews and whatnot. And so that's been just a great way to generate more business is like, being able to point to that or, having their friends reach out, so on and so forth. So definitely referrals is huge, like it is for so many, I know. And then, outside of that, I think, we have a really significant ish. I don't know if this is a large amount or not, but we have like maybe 7,000 ish newsletter subscribers. So we definitely feel like we have a pretty solid audience that has, of course, their own spheres. So it's like every single person that's getting our newsletter, it's not just about selling to them. Some of them don't even live in Chicago. It's about who's in their sphere. Is there somebody in their sphere that could benefit from one of our upcoming classes or a tidbit that we share in the newsletter, so on and so forth.
I love all of that. One thing you said about your classes, just to go back for a second, which I thought was a brilliant idea that I haven't heard yet, which is navigating the Chicago public school system or the schools. Maybe it's public and private, but this is what, unless you're in a rural area where there's only one school system and that's what it is. But if you're certainly in a metro area like we are, certainly very urban, and a million different school options here in Chicago, and a lot of big cities have that same challenge. Is then, do we have to live somewhere to get into certain schools? How does it work? And I know everybody, one of my friends who has children who lives in the city, has gone through this, and it is stressful. It is difficult. It is complicated, and you just want somebody to tell you how it all works. And so
Yeah.
that I just wanted to make a sort of put a point on that because that's a great idea for everyone who is listening. Um, Consider doing something like that.
I will say we did not invent the idea of the school seminar. There are a couple of agents that I've seen do things around Chicago schools. And for me, it never piqued my interest or attention until now I have two kids. And now I'm like, oh, wait, like this is actually super valuable. And a lot of our clients are the same age as me and they're kind of coming into this next chapter. So it was a natural growth thing, but it was something that I did, kind of copy. So I'll say that.
I love that. And I also wanted to talk about, with your team, how are you keeping them motivated, right? Like this is not the easiest time to be a realtor. So certainly with, obviously the publicity, the media is obviously commented on the NAR settlements and the lawsuits, and just pricing being a little goofy as well as rates being not ideal. But how are you keeping the team going forward every day? What is your approach there?
You know, I don't have a great answer for that. I think that I am a really good leader, but I don't know sometimes that I'm like the perfect leader or the most motivating person. I think that, our team is unique in that we're not meeting every day. We're not having, or meeting every week. We're not having like daily calls or anything like that. There are a lot of teams out there that are constantly, being coached, meeting, accountability, things like that. I would say I definitely take a step back from that approach, and I embrace the client or the agents on my team, being busy where they are. If they are constantly, on showings and they're out and about, great. I don't want to bog them down with additional
Sure.
things. If they're looking for, getting together and, a happy hour here and there, like then, we'll try to get something on the books. But I do feel like it's really important that at the end of the day, like my teammates are independent contractors. They are, choosing real estate because of the flexibility that it gives. I don't want to be bogging them down with meetings and things like that. Now, that said, we do have strong friendships with each other and great relationships. We have, our text thread that almost every day somebody's got a question and somebody's got an answer. So we're definitely supportive in that way. We cover each other in the field. We meet regularly, we meet monthly and then also quarterly. And then we do fun things when we can. Like today, I was at the office with one of my agents and we just kind of hung out, listened to music, and it was fun. Like, I think I'm more of a laissez faire leader in that way, where, these women that I work with, like, they're also my friends. Like, I love hanging out with them. I love when we're all together. And I am, with a lot of them very close. So I guess it's a unique team in that way that we don't follow the typical real estate advice that maybe a team lead would get, but it works for us. And I think my
Yeah.
agents are, content with the pace of things and are very busy and, in different life stages as well.
By the way, we should mention for anyone who is a Chicago agent who is looking possibly to join a team or switch teams or just want to be around Melanie and her team and see if they might be able to offer value to the team and vice versa, they can reach out to you because you are ever expanding, you're always growing, and always looking for that next great agent. And so, what would be the best way that somebody who's like, I want more of what I'm hearing, how should they reach out to you to sort of introduce themselves?
Send me an email. I love connecting with the agents. I honestly connect with agents a lot throughout the year, and we'll just, have conversations, phone calls, coffee, just like for me, not only from a recruiting standpoint, obviously that's so important and, a core tenet of like my responsibilities. But I would also add that as a boutique broker, it's so vital for me to have strong broker relationships because we don't have that backing of a company that everybody might be familiar with. So we really have to get scrappy when it comes to finding pocket listings, opportunities, really just exploring and meeting different agents like in the same industry. I think is so valuable and we can all learn from each other. I love masterminds. I love picking other agents' brains. I have so many agents outside of my team that I call all the time with questions and, just to complain sometimes, about the ups and downs of being in real estate. But yeah, I think that the brokerage community is so amazing here in Chicago, and there are so many talented people at many different brokerages. And it's really a privilege for me to be able to build relationships with those agents.
Well, if you want to build a relationship with Melanie, email her and you can go to her website, which is melanieeverettco.com, which we have a link to in the show notes. My last question, open houses, still effective, less effective? What is your take on open houses in 2020, end of 2024, early 2025?
Well, one of my agents hosted an open house, met a couple, and they ended up buying $1 million+ place with her. So I would say effective. That was just this year. It's not always a result. It's a numbers
Sure.
game, just like anything. You have to host enough of them to really get the full effect. But yeah, I mean, when I started my business, I was the open house girl for that Coldwell Banker office. I was every weekend, sometimes doubling up on open houses. So imagine how exhausted and introverted me was doing 2 open houses in one weekend. But, that's how I met so many of my first clients. It's not that easy anymore. People find agents online a lot more, and they're more hesitant, I think, meeting people in person at open houses. But I still think if you've got the skill set, if you're asking the right questions and you're listening and not just speaking to open house guests, I think that's where, the magic can happen and you can really get leads from it.
Agreed. Well, I think this is a great place for us to wrap up. I want to also mention to all of our listeners, which like 95% of them don't live in Chicago. So, but you may have clients that move in and out of Chicago, right? Certainly, we are one of those markets that feeds other markets and we get fed as well. So, if you are another agent in another market that wants to develop a relationship with Melanie to see if you guys could refer business back and forth and if you guys would be a good culture fit, definitely reach out to her, email her as well. We'll have a link to her email in the show notes, as well as you can go to her website and connect with her on social pretty easily too. But I really encourage everybody listening to go to her website for no other reason than to look to see how it's a little different than what you're probably used to seeing with team and brokerage websites. There's a very intentional aesthetic there that I think is pleasing, at least pleasing to me. Also, if you look at the Instagram, there's a gentleness to the way that things. I think gentleness would be another word I would use, an adjective to describe your brand. And I don't mean that in any sort of pejorative way. I mean, it is a unique and very difficult to I think to present authentically, but I think you have that, and I think that gentleness is very disarming, and I think it's welcoming and inviting. And when you go to her Instagram in particular, as well as her website, you'll feel the gentleness sort of coming through. And notice what I would encourage our listeners to do is, as you're checking out her stuff, notice how you feel as you're going through. Do you feel? Are you feeling a certain type of connection or emotion? I suspect you will be, and it'll be very automatic. So it's a really cool website. It's a great aesthetic on all of your Instagram posts, as well as all the stuff you do on social. And I think gentleness really, really works. But it's hard to do, and I think you do it incredibly well. I hope you take that as a compliment.
That was so nice. Seriously. I wish I had just recorded all of that stuff you said and could just replay it when I'm having an off day. But wait, it is recorded, right? I can go back and
It's
listen to
true.
this on Spotify. It's
Yeah,
good. It's
you
great.
could upload it into Chat GBT and tell it to give you a compliment every day from one of the things I said too. But anyway, this
Oh,
Melanie, thank you so much for coming back. We are such big fans of yours, and really, your first episode when I released it ended up becoming one of our most listened to episodes of all time. It still
wow.
probably is. I don't look at those numbers anymore, but I probably should. But anyway, you are still so much fun to talk to. Everything you do is really unique and different, and just welcoming and warm. And I really encourage everyone to check out and borrow from her, borrow from Melanie's, borrow from the way that she presents herself, if that is a good fit for you as well. And if you want to join her team, well, she just told you how to reach out and start that conversation. So on behalf of our listeners, Melanie, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. I know there are kids to tend to, there's business to tend to, and you took time out of your day. So appreciate you on behalf of the audience and on behalf of Melanie and myself. Thank you to the audience for sticking around to the end. We appreciate you. The best way you can help our show, should you want to, is a couple of ways. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts now, or Spotify, wherever you're listening. We read all the reviews and make changes based on your suggestions. And the best way you can help us is tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that needs to hear what Melanie just talked about today with respect to branding and team building and just sort of how to run a business. Send this off to somebody who's struggling right now. They would appreciate it, and we would appreciate it. So thank you to our audience in advance. Melanie, we will see everybody on the next episode, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a blast and I really appreciate it.